Welcome to the Dice Tower, a series of video reviews about board and card games. Here are your hosts, Tom Vasel and Sam Healey.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel.
Zee Garcia, how are you folks?
Sam Healey, what's up, y'all?
And today we're taking a look at Fury of Dracula, which also has the not mentioned title that this is the third edition. The first edition came out almost 2 decades ago, I think. An old, sprawling game, and then they revamped it majorly with the second edition. This is more of a minor revamping, I would say.
Streamlining.
Yeah, streamlining of the second edition. But if you've never played it before, that's fine. This review will tell you how to play it, and, well, let's do that now. The game is played on a map of Europe, and there are different cities scattered throughout there. Dracula is going to be moving secretly around the board. The hunters are going to be moving much more openly. Each of them has different figures that they'll be using to move around the board. One player is going to be playing Dracula, and then the other players are going to split the different hunters. Dr. John Seward, Van Helsing, Mina Harker, and Lord Godalming. So if only one person's playing, he's going to be playing all of the hunters, and if 2 people are playing, each play 2, etc. Now I said Dracula is going to be moving secretly. He'll be looking at this board. There's a smaller board, which you can see is a duplication of this one, so he can look at it without giving away his position with his eyes. And Dracula has a set of cards here. These cards are alphabetical and they're numbered at the bottom to keep them in order. So let's say Dracula wants to move to Milan. Then he will put this card here on this track, and as the game goes by, each time he moves, so let's say he goes from Milan to Geneva, so he'll look for the Geneva card in here, and he'll take that card out and place it here face down on the track. So players don't know exactly where he is, but they see these cards, and if he ever moves into the sea, the back of the card is blue, so players will know that Dracula has moved at the sea, although they don't necessarily know which sea. Dracula will also be placing surprise cards, different encounter cards. He'll have a handful of these and placing them down. Sometimes these are vampires that if they get to the end of the track will give Dracula influence points. Sometimes they're just negative things to hunters who find them. Because whenever a hunter goes into one of the spots that Dracula has been in, he will reveal that spot. So if they go to Geneva, for example, he'll reveal they're in Geneva. He'll also reveal whatever's there, which if it's like one of his small vampires, they'll have to fight it. And if a hunter ever moves into a spot where Dracula is, they have to fight him too. The game revolves around this mechanism up here. This is the influence track. If Dracula ever gets 13 influence, then he wins the game. He gets influence by killing hunters, by getting his vampires in and out of the track, and after a while, after a certain amount of time, he's just getting it every day. There's a time thing here. Dracula's going to move, and then there's a morning and a night to each day. So Dracula moves, then each hunter does an action in the morning, then they do an action at night, and so on and so forth. As this moves around, despair tokens start showing up in it, and despair tokens do a couple things. When they're all completed, Dracula is going to be able to get influence a lot quicker, but also when there's a fight, Dracula has to stay in combat a little bit longer, depending on how many of these are here. Some of the actions are different depending on the night or during the day. Now, combat's going to happen when a hunter finds one of the small vampires, or if they run across Dracula himself. Each hunter starts with these 3 cards: punch, dodge, and escape. And as the game goes by, they might get other things. They might get things like holy bullets, or a rifle, a crucifix, a pistol, a heavenly host, garlic. And each of these cards is going to give them things. So let's say this character also has garlic, and they also have a pistol. Now, when they come into combat with Dracula, they're going to pick one of these cards secretly. Dracula, on the other hand, has a deck of cards, and he'll be drawing cards from this deck. They're the same cards. They never get better or worse. So he has fangs and plotting, escape as bat, escape as a mist. These 2 cards are used to escape and run from the battle, but they can't be played always at the beginning of the battle, depending on how many despair tokens there are. Claws and strength. So each character Dracula and the hunter. And if there's multiple hunters, they're going to be all playing cards, and Dracula's only going to face up against one of them. So let's say Dracula plays this card, and the character plays punch. So we turn these over. The first thing we do is we look at the symbol here that Dracula played, which is a punch symbol, or the fist symbol. Is that symbol here? It's not. So we read Dracula's thing here. It says the engaged hunter takes 2 damage. If he played punch, crucifix, or a weapons card, cancel their card. So this card's canceled, and that's the end of that round. If, however, Dracula had played punch and the other person played dodge, then this symbol's here, so this card is immediately canceled, and we just do whatever the card says here, which is nothing. Basically, he just dodged a punch. Maybe he played punch, and the hunter played garlic. Again, this card's canceled, and it says if you are the engaged hunter and fangs or claws was played, the vampire takes 2 damage. Well, it wasn't fangs or claws, but he did manage to dodge the vampire's strength. So it's kind of a game of basically rock, paper, scissors, although the Dracula is going to be stymied by whatever cards he happens to have. He'll have 5 cards, and he'll draw a card each round after he plays one. Now, the combat will end after 6 rounds, and then there's an automatic disengagement, or if Dracula escapes earlier than that, or the hunters escape. The hunters are trying to kill Dracula, which will make them win the game, and each character has a certain number of hit points on them. You can see here that they have a certain number of hit points. He has 11 and 9. All hunters can also be killed by being bit by Dracula if they're bit twice, except for Mina Harker, who automatically starts with a bite. But they also have other special abilities to make up for that. Dracula himself has 15 hit points and also a few special abilities. So players each have one action that they can do on their turn, and one of these actions can just be moving from an adjacent location to another, or moving out into the sea themselves. They can't catch Dracula at sea, but it is one way to move. They can also get tickets. There are a lot of different tickets that they will draw from a pile. These tickets are going to show different numbers based on which railroad system they're using. So you'll see this is a 2, 1, a 1, 1, a 2, 2. And so later on, they can use these railroad lines that are on the board, and they're a way to get around the board faster. Dracula cannot use railroad lines. There's 2 different colors, the yellow and the white, and some tickets will work better on the one color than the other. Players can also rest on their turn to recover 1 damage. They can search, which if there is an encounter card in their area, they can search for that encounter card. They can also use an action that they have. They can supply. Now, supply is a big deal for hunters, because supply is a way to get these other cards like this. And you'll be drawing these from a deck of cards. But whenever you supply, you're also going to be drawing an event card. Now, the event deck is very intriguing because it is full of both cards that are good for the hunters and cards that are good for Dracula. They're shuffled together. Now, if the hunters do this during the day, they draw the top cards, so they know which cards can be. If they do it at night, they draw the bottom card, which again could be good or bad. Most of the cards in this deck are good for the hunters, but not all of them are. These cards will give them all sorts of actions that they can play. Sometimes there's an ally, which can be played. There's even a spot up here on the board to put an ally who gives them a bit of special ability. Dracula can have allies come from these special cards. So players are taking a chance, and they can only get these supplies anyway in large cities. Sometimes they can just draw an event card if they want to. And then hunters can also trade items. And that's basically the whole game. There's smaller different rules going on, but essentially the hunters are trying to make a net to find Dracula, to find his trail, to get rid of those small vampires so they don't get to the end of the line. Dracula's trying to just cause trouble and keep away from the hunters. So they need to find him and kill him, and then they win. Or if he gets enough influence on the influence track, then Dracula wins. All right, well, what did you guys think of the look of the game? The box, the map, the cards, the artwork?
I like most of it. I thought the only thing that was a little bit lacking for me was the board itself is a little more muted than I'd like. I do like the look of the 2.0 version, the board anyway, more than I like this. The rest is fine. The rest is well done. It's interesting. It's well painted. I like it. I like it.
I too liked the Victorian feel, I guess you could call it, of the second edition. That's the one I guess you could say I fell in love with the look and how the map looked like an old vintage map. and how it just really kind of popped that way. I was underwhelmed with the look of this one, but it is what it is. I'm not a graphic designer. I'm not an artist, so you kind of got to go with what other people put out there sometimes. But when I saw the box cover, I was like, because they went with that kind of 50s horror movie, Dracula.
I have a hard time seeing the cover and not thinking about Sesame Street. He looks like a mean version of the Sesame Street Dracula.
Okay.
But I do like the cover.
Yeah.
I just think of that. I like the artwork. I'll mention with Z that the board is a bit muted for me too. I wouldn't have minded if they made the colors of the regions a little bit more defined, especially since one of the characters has a power which essentially lets her figure out if someone's in a region or not.
Mm-hmm.
Good power, by the way.
Yeah. Is that Mina?
Yes.
Yeah, Mina has that
Which
power.
is a brand new power for this version.
Is it?
Yes, it is. That's not in the old one. Because after I played this for the first time, I specifically went and looked up the second one and compared some things. And since might as well launch into mechanisms now, I think that they did a really great job taking what 2.0 was, which was a good game, very solid game, and then sort of speeding everybody's turns up, adding some interest, just mainly streamlining everything pretty much in a positive way through and through.
Now, he mentions that they speeded up the turns, but the game itself is not that much faster. It's 2 to 3 hours, it says, and that's pretty accurate. I think you could play a 2-hour game.
Yeah.
Could you play 2 hours of the part 2? I guess that one. This might be a little bit shorter then, because I think that one leaned more towards 3.
Yeah.
Usually.
It might be 30 minutes shorter ultimately,
Right.
but it feels faster.
Right,
which
'cause
is
you're
the
doing more.
difference, because you are doing less in every turn, which means your turns are shorter and your turns come around quicker, which gives the whole game sort of a
Makes you feel like you're playing more, but you're actually not.
right,
There's
and
less
it
downtime.
feeds that theme of always being on the hunt
Right.
versus, oh, it's my turn, okay, let me think for a bit here, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do that, and it just sort of slowed everything down. I think the streamlining of this game, the turn to turns, is a solid improvement.
Now, this is a one-verse-all game, and in that regard, many people have mentioned that they think it plays best with 5 because each person controls one hunter, and it probably does. Although I do it's not that hard to control a couple hunters and such if you want to. The game, my biggest complaint about the second edition of Fury of Dracula was I felt that Dracula himself was, maybe the game was a little bit tilted towards him. Especially if the person playing Dracula is like, I'm just going to hide the whole time, and they would run, and then they would show up and beat the snot out of you every once in a while. Well, that still happens here. Dracula's running and hiding and shows up to beat the snot out of you. But I think the hunters can beat the snot out of Dracula, especially if they're equipped properly.
Yeah.
Which I feel is thematic. Dracula, during the daytime, being fought should be easier to beat, especially if there's multiple hunters. And I think this game did a great job at making it more of an even game. Now, I think it's even tilted towards the hunters a little bit if you play just the basic game. But then if you play the advanced game, Dracula can do things like double back, go to 2 locations in a row, has a wolf form and things like that. But even then, I still think it's balanced much more than the previous. I don't think the previous one was unbalanced, but I always thought Dracula had the edge.
Well, here's the thing. In the old one, the idea was at night he could wail on you, but during the day, where he could still hold his own, it was very easy to eventually find Dracula and for him to, he's gone. And okay, we got to go look for him again. And it was very easy for Dracula to call the fight off, so to speak, right away. And in this game, it's a little harder for that disengaged state to happen, which I like. That means when you get into a fight, it's slightly longer. And so there will be, the ratio shifts a little bit from just looking for Dracula to more combat. And I like that. And that Mina power you guys are talking about helps you find Dracula.
Right.
Considerably faster sometimes.
Yeah.
Because before, you really had to just go looking through the map, start dividing it, and maybe you'd come across this path. But in this one, that power she has of, tell me if you're in this whole area, That's pretty cool, and that's very interesting. If nothing, even if nothing else, he says yes, he's there, and then he's gone. You can still go through those cities and come upon his path at least.
Yeah, it almost helps you almost like divide the map in half. If you place her in the right spot and you have her moving in the right areas, you can actually divide the board in half, and you can basically say, with a level of confidence, he's over here.
Right.
And he's not over here, which is a huge help.
Yeah, and leads to more fighting.
Right.
Which is great.
If you like games like Scotland Yard or where you're trying to hide from people, this one is really good. In fact, I was thinking about this as going through it. Scotland Yard is hunting down Mr. X. Then there's the other game, Letters from Whitechapel, which is find the trail of the bad guy. Here you're doing both. You're hunting Dracula and finding the trail.
Right.
But this also adds another level with combat. What did you think about combat in this edition?
Combat in, I don't know, it kind of felt more, you know me, I love rolling dice, and there's not any of that.
Right.
It's pretty much deterministic combat. This beats this beats that, and so forth and so on. And you can kind of, I like the fact that Dracula, see, it was bugging you, wasn't it? It was bugging you.
Oh, well, I knew it was bugging you.
No, it was bugging you. I didn't say anything. So the deterministic combat is pretty cool. I like the fact that Dracula has to discard his cards, though.
And he might not get escape as a mist in his first hand.
Right, he may not get it. So that, again, just promotes this whole idea of what he was talking about, more combat, more duking it out, more action than just the sleuthy part of the game that's always been there.
Right.
So deterministic combat is usually a pass for me, but as a total package for Fury of Dracula, I think it works very well.
I think this is an overall improvement through and through from the original from the version 2.0 fighting system, which was clunkier, was luckier somehow.
Right.
Because you would, pick a card and then roll a die and then compare who goes first. And if it was a tie, then go to this other secondary number on the card you picked. And if nothing happened, then you got that token, which had like an arrow that meant nothing. If you got 3 of those, combat's it was clunkier. This is simple. This is pick a card, simultaneously reveal them, what just went down.
Yeah.
Do it again. And that Dracula does not have all their cards at once means that they, like you said, Tom, they just might not get what they're hoping for. Mm-hmm. They might not be able to escape. They might not be able to have access to something powerful that they're hoping to draw. And that's interesting. That means we caught him at a weakened moment, and you know that can lead to some amazing, very cinematic moments in the game. I think the combat system, they did an amazing job with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really like just the thematic flair to it. Like Dracula's trying to mesmerize person, they punch him right in the face. You're like, oh.
Look into my eye.
Or they're trying to dodge him and they can't because he's mesmerized. I mean, it works really well, and new players will have a tougher time of it because you got to know kind of what the Dracula cards are, but they're really not. There's not that many of them.
Right.
Either he's escaping, he's trying to bite you, claw you, whatever, and so you got to pick the right time to dodge. And this game also does a good job that when there's multiple hunters up against Dracula, he's in trouble.
Yeah.
Which is the way it is always in every movie.
Right.
If you go face to face with Dracula, you're in trouble. But if you bring a bunch of people, he's going to try to run.
Grab your swords and pitchforks.
So, what are your overall thoughts on this one?
I think this is. I've always like Sam said. I enjoyed Fear of Dracula 2.0.
Yep.
It's a game I've liked. The game that is one of the few games that is that long, 2.5 hours or so, and I do enjoy because it is thematic. It's engaging, and I think 3.0 here takes that game and elevates it even more. It has a better combat system. It makes for better player turns. It has more action. All of those things lead to a better game ultimately.
I was on the fence when I first saw the package. I really was. And when I saw the board, I was even more on the fence. But gameplay altogether, just like both of these have already said, really elevates the game to a higher echelon of game. It's a better game than 2.0 is. I wish it still had the look. Are you allergic? I wish it still had the look of 2.0. Garlic. I wish it still had the look of 2.0, but the gameplay allows me to overlook the package and really enjoy the new game that's there. Still very similar to the 2.0, but better.
No thumbs?
Well, he didn't do thumbs.
I'm going to give it 2 sharp wooden stakes up. 2 stakes.
I'm going to give it 2 pointy teeth up.
All right.
What are we both doing?
See, I told you what the Sesame Street.
Dracula.
Why not?
All right. So anyhow, I really enjoy it also. I like the whole hidden aspect of everything. I'm not as big of a fan as these guys are of it, but I do think that this one is the best version of it. I like the tickets, how they worked. I like the combat.
Yes.
Love the event deck where there's good and bad events you pull from the top or the bottom.
That's another thing that we didn't even talk about. I'll say very briefly, the traveling with the trains, much better in this game.
So overall, I thought it was a good balanced game. So I'll give it 1.5 thumbs with really long fingernails up.
Manicure.
2 manicures.
Anyhow, check it out. That's Fury of Dracula from Fantasy Flight.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.